Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me today, THI publisher Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here to talk about the ACC Tournament. And as you can probably tell by the title, the question mark is, can Carolina win the ACC Tournament? We're going to talk about that, talk about who Carolina's facing in the first round and potential second round matchup as well, and just dive into the Tar Heels' chances in Greensboro this week. AJ, I'm going to go ahead and run through some things so people can understand where the Tar Heels are heading into this, and then I'll go ahead and we'll dive right into it as we always do. Carolina, number 6 seed in this week's ACC Tournament. They're going to play on Wednesday night against the winner of Notre Dame or the Wake Forest game. So Wednesday night, 9 p.m. game for the Tar Heels, nightcap for UNC. So AJ, I'm going to start off with this question based on the title of this video. I feel like it's an appropriate way to start it, and I think I know what you're going to say, but we'll see if you do. Can Carolina win this year's ACC tournament?
And just for the record, we don't rehearse.
No, we don't.
Like when we do our 3 things after games, I show up where you are with the camera. You're like, what are the 3 things? I'm like, oh.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Boom, let's roll with it. I mean, usually it's kind of obvious, but no. So we haven't rehearsed this. We actually do have a staff picks for the tournament that's posted on the site right now. It just got put up here after we recorded this, but this will be posted on the front after sometime tonight, Monday night. Can they win it? They can.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you look at every team in the league recently, they've all been flawed. So it's not one of those years where you think, man, chalk has to advance. Virginia hadn't been that great lately, and they're the top seed. The last 2 Saturdays, Florida State blew a big lead at Carolina, and they were down 20 at Notre Dame. Got beat by Notre Dame. Those are by far the 2 best teams in the league. Clemson's probably quietly playing the best in the conference right now. Tigers have kind of found themselves again, I guess, whatever that means, because the way this season has been. So I thought Clemson had the most impressive resume through December. They beat Alabama. They beat Purdue. They got some nice wins, and they've been kind of picking it up here a little bit again lately. I don't know if they have the firepower to go through and win it. And I'm answering your question by process of elimination, okay?
Yeah.
We're just going through everybody else. I don't think Louisville ever got on track this year. I don't think Louisville gets on track this week. I have a hard time seeing that. Virginia Tech hasn't played for a while. It's a really tough time of the year to come off a COVID pause, assuming that the Hokies do play. And I say that kind of jokingly because they didn't play this weekend.
Yeah,
I think NC State's playing really well. Maybe they're playing the best in the league. Kudos to Kevin Keats for regrouping that bunch after they lost Devin Daniels. Not only this he was a good player, but they lost a guy who was sort of their engine. They lost a guy who was ball dominant, and they figured it out, and they've won 5 in a row. The Wolfpack get to Saturday night. Maybe the Wolfpack gets to the tournament. Maybe they win it. This might be a year somebody wins it that is currently not even on the fence, and they play their way into the tournament. NC State is a kind of team that can do that. They got enough inside. They can shoot enough outside. And the way that they're playing defensively, getting teams into some chaos, I think works well for them. I don't know if there's any Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. I was on a radio show the other day with Matt Hatfield up in Virginia Beach, and I said, you know what? Right now, I'm going to say Georgia Tech is my pick to win the ACC tournament.
That's not a bad pick, man. That's not a bad pick.
And the reason is it's because they're old, they have really good guard play, and they got a dynamite guy in the middle who got a lot. I was surprised Moses Wright was ACC Player of the Year, Jacob, only because I didn't think people would vote for him. But
I would agree.
When you watch them play, he changes games. You got Alvarado up top, and you got Moses Wright down low. Who else in the league has that right now? And they're defending well. I'm not a big Josh Pastner guy. I think a lot of other people kind of
probably agree with that.
Sometimes teams win in spite of their head coach.
Yeah.
But he's doing a good job with this group. I don't know how the heck they lost Mercer and Georgia State to open the year. That's a head scratcher, and that will affect their seed. But I think they're a threat this weekend, and they're a threat the following weekend to get to get maybe the Sweet 16, maybe a little bit further. You never know. So this is a long, long way of getting around to Carolina. Basically, what I'm saying is, I don't think there is one team that you look at and say, boy, they just got so much going for them. I could see them just breezing right into Saturday night and winning this thing. I think it's going to be a team where a secondary type player gets hot for a few days, and like a Kerwin Walton gets hot for a few days and kind of helps keep Carolina balanced. We've always been talking a lot about the need for balance lately. That would have to happen for Carolina to make a push. But the Tar Heels would have to be out of character to fully answer your question. In order for Carolina to win the ACC tournament, they would have to be out of character. Quite frankly, they'd have to be out of character to get to Saturday night, and even a little bit out of character to get to Friday night, because their trend lately has been play well, lay an egg, to take Caleb Love's words. Play well, lay an egg. Play well, lay an egg. Well, they played really well Saturday night. I think Notre Dame is a dangerous opponent for them Wednesday night. It wouldn't surprise me if the Tar Heels go out to the Irish. But if they win that game, and then they get a Virginia Tech team that hadn't played in 2 weeks, and a club that I think could have some issues defending Carolina in the paint, I think that's a nice matchup for UNC to get to Friday. But if FSU is waiting there Friday, that ain't happening. Carolina's not getting by the Seminoles.
I don't think so either, especially after how embarrassing that second half from a Florida State perspective was in Chapel Hill a couple of weeks ago. I think that kind of plays into the Seminoles' favor. And I agree with you. We talked about a little bit off camera. You mentioned kind of the staff picks that we do for the ACC tournament. We were the only two on the staff, which you'll see here in a little bit if you check out our website, TarHeelIllustrated.com, that they kind of picked the Heels winning one and losing one. I think we're kind of on the same page as that. And the reason I did it, and I think you'll agree with it, is I have no sample size from this year. Just no evidence to suggest that Carolina can put any kind of consistent performances together. Because to win this tournament, they're going to have to win 4 straight. And I just don't see Carolina doing that. So when I'm going into the staff picks, I'm like, I don't have the evidence there to suggest that Carolina is even capable of doing this. So personally, I think they beat Notre Dame and Wake Forest. I think it ends up probably being Notre Dame. And then I think they end up losing to Virginia Tech. But I mean, crazier things have happened. It's such a weird year with COVID and everything going on. So many teams are up and down, like you've mentioned. I mean, could Carolina make a run deep in the tournament? Absolutely. I just personally don't see it happening because of what we've seen from the Tar Heels this season.
I think if it does happen, I'm with you. Let me go back for a second. I've done this for a long time, and I've never made it a habit of projecting a team to do something I haven't seen any indication it can do yet.
Exactly.
So, I mean, Carolina had a little rain stretch there in January, but they weren't playing real well. They were learning how to win, and we talked in our videos back then. They had to go through that to get to where they've been lately. So their high ends lately have been really good. I mean, Louisville, Florida State, Duke the other night. Those 3 performances were significantly better than anything they did in December and January.
Absolutely.
So they're getting better, but they still have that inconsistency. A big part of that is their youth. Now, you get to the postseason, that youth is still an issue. Youth is still an issue as far as the inconsistency goes, projecting it. But at the same time, if maybe the light goes on for that youth, and suddenly they have transformed into a consistent team, and maybe that begins now. I think when you look at this ACC tournament, go back to what I said a few minutes ago, that everybody's flawed. So what gives a team like UNC a chance to maybe get hot and string together some wins is because it's going up against teams that are having many of the same questions. Honestly, Florida State looked awesome for a while, but how do you blow that game, that lead in Chapel Hill, and how do you just not win at Notre Dame the other day?
Yeah, no, with what was on the line, yeah.
Yeah, look how bad Virginia was for a stretch there. I mean, they did not look good for a while. So
yeah, they were bad.
What if that FSU team shows up and they're not even there Friday when Carolina gets there? What if Virginia doesn't make it this Saturday? What if it's a hodgepodge? So let's do this. Let's go through. Let's identify the teams that are not winning this thing for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a few.
BC. Yeah. BC should just fly in and out, go home. Yeah. Okay. Duke plays BC, right?
Yes, believe so.
Duke's going to hammer BC. Okay.
I would probably
Wake
agree
Forest
with
that. Notre Dame's going to score 85 points on Wake, and Wake's going to be stressed. Notre Dame's going to beat Wake. Although banking on Notre Dame to win a game is not a very smart move either.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? But Notre Dame's not going to win this tournament either. Okay. So that's 3. Pitt's not going to win it. They're done. They've been done for a month. Syracuse could get hot because of Boeheim, and I just don't think they're good enough up front. So I don't think they're going to win it. Duke has to win this event to go to the NCAA tournament. I don't think Duke can do it. I don't think the guard plays good enough. In fact, as much as Carolina's struggling in the backcourt, Carolina's guard play right now is better than Duke's. And that's been a real liability for Carolina at times this year. So we're kind of eliminating a lot of teams right now. I think the rest could get hot and have a chance. So is Carolina, of those teams, who's Carolina better than? They're better than State. I think they're better than Syracuse. I think they're better than Louisville. Then you start looking at Clemson, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Florida State. I'm not sure they're better than those teams, but they can be better than all of them on a given night.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so it can happen. It can happen maybe without Carolina playing out of this world for 4 nights because the league is down and because other teams are flawed. I mean, what happens if Jay Huff gets in foul trouble? What do they become? You know, what happens if Raekwon Gray's in foul trouble or Scotty Barnes is off? They can be knocked out. And Clemson, they have a problem scoring sometimes. What if Amir Sims is in foul trouble? They're gone. These other teams don't have a lot of room for error. Unlike like Florida State last year, if that tournament would have been completed, Florida State was a heavy favorite to win the ACC tournament. Okay, there have been years in the past where Duke was a heavy favorite, or Carolina or Virginia a couple times. I don't think that's the case this year. And because of that, a young team that's been growing and clearly getting better. And by the way, Caleb Love has 4 games this year with 7 or more assists, and they've all come since the first Duke game. So to go back to what Roy said last week, and I'm talking about growth here, okay? When I asked him, how has Caleb grown in ways that maybe we in the media and fans haven't seen since that first Duke game? And he said awareness, recognition, knowing where the guys are. And we saw that with some of his assists the other night. So maybe that process continues. And they're the youngest team there. And they're the one that's relying on the most young guys. So it's possible, Jacob. I know that's a really long spread out answer, but that's kind of where the ACC is right now. There's nothing really concrete. The one thing I will guarantee you is that if the Tar Heels win Wednesday night, they'll play really well in winning. But then I can't guarantee anything after that.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to ask you this. You talked about Carolina can win it. We answered a similar question on our staff picks for the ACC tournament. Who do you think has to play well? Who's kind of the X factor for the Tar Heels that if they can come in, or maybe the guy you're looking for to say, okay, I kind of expect this guy to have a big tournament, a big however many games Carolina ends up playing. Who is that guy for you on this Carolina roster? I'll let you answer, then I'll say who mine is. But
and I won't go 14 minutes with this response. There are multiple guys, but just pick out one. I think it's really important that Garrison Brooks plays well right away Wednesday night. In the games that he started out well this year, and it's been happening more lately, they have been better in those games. He was really, I know he went out at that first minute, but he hit that basket, their first possession. He hit a nice jump shot, hit one over Matthew Hurt, and that was kind of a message shot. That was Garrison looking like the guy that we saw in the last 19 games of last season. The reason he was ACC Player of the Year was because he was hitting shots around. He was getting finesse stuff up. Now, in the last 5 games, Garrison is 25 for 37 from the field. It's at 67%. I think that there's a comfort in his game now that may have been missing for a while. You talk to David Sisk, his floor game, the defense. He was on Matthew Hurt a lot the other night. And Carolina did not let Matthew Hurt get going. His first bucket was with 1:18 left in the half, and it cut Carolina's lead to 19. And that was a huge part of that game. And Garrison was on him a lot. Garrison's assist numbers at times, the way he's playing off the other guys, I think there's been a little bit more leadership coming from him. He's not a fanny smacker, never will be. But when he starts out well and he's totally dialed in, that's part of his leadership, okay? So I think Garrison, if they're going to make a run and win this thing, Garrison has to play well. They need the old guy. They need the guy who was second team all-conference last year to play well. You can't rely on a bunch of 19-year-olds to lead you to the title. Now, if Garrison does that, then the 19-year-olds can go along for the ride and play well. But I think if he's playing well early, it relaxes the other guys too. So I'm going to say Garrison is, to me, the player to watch. And if they make a run, he'll be right in the thick of being a major reason why.
I agree. I said the same thing on the staff picks as well. I say Garrison for me is kind of the X factor. Just, some better performances towards the end of the season. I think that Duke win on senior night was a big one as well. And obviously there were some factors that went into it, but I think if Carolina is going to make a run in this tournament with the amount of young guys that Carolina relies on, you got to have somebody step up that's been there before and that's experienced it before and that has just played the amount of games that Garrison has. So if they can get some really positive performances out of Garrison, I think that's going to bode well for the Tar Heels. And like you kind of mentioned a little bit, I think Caleb Love is a big one too. I'm interested to see if You talked about him playing a little bit better over recent weeks and another really good performance over Duke. Can he build on this performance against Duke? Because he didn't do it in the first game. He played really well against Duke and really struggled after that for the 4 or 5 games after that.
The assist numbers were there.
Yeah, they were there. He got better, but
he had like 3 or 4 low scoring games before Duke. So he was here and then he flared up and then he came back down here.
Came back to where it was. Yeah.
Popped up in the last few games. I think Caleb has to be a game manager and a distributor and an awareness guy more than a scorer. They can get points from other spots. He's got to be able to score some. He's got to hit a perimeter shot. The defense has to be has to respect that part of his game, but he has to run the team. And he has to see guys when they're open. A couple times the other night, he found Kerwin. Kerwin's learning how to kind of, in a stealth kind of way, get open. I don't understand how teams don't keep him from getting the ball more than they do on the perimeter. But he just finds ways to find little spots. It's Caleb's job then to get him the ball when he's in those spots. He did it a couple times the other night. He's done it more recently. So I would say Caleb is number 2 because your point guard is so important, and he has to be a distributor. Number 3 would be Kerwin because they have to have the outside shot.
They have to have him hit.
I got a piece that we're running Tuesday morning where good Carolina versus bad Carolina, and it's very clear that when they don't shoot well from the perimeter, those are games they lose a lot of the time. When you do shoot well there's only one game. The only outlier were the 2 Florida State games. When they lost in Tallahassee, Carolina was 10 for 24 from the perimeter. But they only had 22 points in the paint. When they won at home against FSU, they were 5 for 23 from the perimeter, but they went off in all kinds of ways, and they were awesome defensively in the second half of that game. So that kind of offset that stuff. But Roy has talked a lot about the need for balance. They've got to have somebody hit those outside shots because it opens up more stuff. The double down from the wing takes a little longer, and the bigs can catch, turn, and score without having the ball stripped. That's really important when you rely so much on your interior game. So he would be the 3rd guy. And the 4th guy would be just another big playing really, really well. I think Armando is the most consistent of them. I think he's the most polished of them. And he combines the physicality and the skill, the polishing, the been there, done that element. And I think Armando could have a really good tournament too. So Garrison, Caleb, Kerwin, Armando, if the 4 of them play well on the same night, they could beat everybody in this field. If they do it for 4 nights, they can win 4 games.
Agreed, AJ. The last thing I kind of want to talk about real quick or ask you before we wrap this one up, Carolina is starting out 9 p.m. on Wednesday against either Notre Dame or Wake Forest, and they're guaranteed if they win that game, they will be playing 9 p.m. on Thursday against Virginia Tech. I'm assuming North Carolina is probably going to end up playing Wake Forest, but for me, that's a case of that first game. For me, is a case of just Carolina comes out and plays like they can and plays up to the standard that they have this season. They should beat Notre Dame and or Wake Forest. I think they're better teams than them, like you mentioned. So in your opinion, what do they have to do to kind of get past that first round? And then building off that, if you want to touch on Virginia Tech as well, we talked about it a little bit off camera in terms of Virginia Tech just being a smaller team. So I look at that as a potential of a game where Carolina could really exploit the Hokies down low and end up beating them pretty easily if they could, establish that, dominance down low like they have against some teams this season.
Yeah, the first and foremost, they have to be ready to play.
Yeah, we've seen this team not be ready to play it many a times this season. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not reaching here. They will tell you that they have to be ready. We've talked to some got a few questions after the game the other night about they have to be focused and ready. They have to be dialed in. Armando said, "Look, it's up to us to be dialed in. If we're dialed in, we're locked in. Then we're really, really good." And they are. When they play at their high end the last month, they've been outstanding. But when they're not totally dialed in and they're not in sync, they're awful. Yeah, and that's part of being a very young team. It's part of being a young, talented team. That's why it's so important that Garrison's dialed in, ready to go. Because I think that those guys are still going to follow his lead. Like I said, he's not a fanny slapper. He's not going to get in their faces and get them going that way. But he can lead by example.
Yeah, set the tone.
There's a lot of different ways to lead. People have been critical of his leadership. They've been critical of the veteran leadership on this team. We're not close enough to really have a good handle on it like we would in other years when we're in the locker room after games and stuff like that. I think, you know what, this book is not finished. There are still a couple of chapters left. Let's see what happens in these last couple of chapters. I really like the way Garrison's closed out the season. I thought the other night was a magnificent night for him, and it was really neat to see a lot of Carolina fans that have been kind of critical of him this year to embrace how emotional he was. You and I've talked a lot off, not doing these recordings. I remember last year after an NC State game in Raleigh, Garrison pulled one of those Tyler Hansbrough, Luke May type performances in that building.
Yeah.
And I said, I saw somebody tweet that, you were channeling your inner Tyler Hansbrough and Luke May. He was overcome by the comparison because he's got so much reverence for what's on the front of that jersey. He's got so much reverence for what hangs in the rafters in that building. And to be compared to those guys was very, very touching. And I think it means a lot. Wearing that uniform means a lot to him. And I think that we saw a lot of that the other night. Just the blessing of being in that program and having a chance to be a part of it. He put a tweet out, gosh, maybe 2 hours after the game. He said, just a little kid from Lafayette, Alabama.
Yeah.
And it had a neat little picture of him. And I thought it was kind of his way of saying, this is pretty cool. Maybe this year didn't go the way I wanted it to, but man, 4 years in this program, playing for this coach, wearing this uniform, being held accountable to this fan base is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And I think that he's relieved. I think he's looser right now because of that. We might see some pretty good Garrison Brooks basketball over the next week or two.
Mm-hmm. And that'll be huge for Carolina because, like we've talked about, if they can get a Garrison Brooks kind of hitting on all cylinders, this team. I think you mentioned him not being a super vocal leader kind of guy, slap you on the fanny kind of thing, but he leads by example, and he can really set the tone if he comes out and plays well. And he'll give other guys confidence because you've got a senior that's been here before, playing well, and it gives other guys under you confidence. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I agree with you on the Garrison thing, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what this team can do this week because do I think they're going to win it? No, but I think, like you mentioned, with the ACC being so incredibly inconsistent and up and down, kind of like the Tar Heels have been this season. I mean, it's there for the taking. There's a handful of
There is a path.
There's a path.
If they're cutting down the nets Saturday night, I'm not going to be shocked. I don't anticipate it happening. I think we just got to go with what we've seen. Mm-hmm. All right. That's the smart pick, right?
Yeah.
But somebody's going to win Saturday night. It hasn't been that great lately.
I agree. Yeah. It doesn't matter who it is. Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah.
So, if you're doing a Florida State podcast right now, or if you're doing a Virginia one, or quite frankly, other than NC State, who's been playing really well, and Clemson, and they're still very flawed.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's saying the same thing. If you and I were covering any other team in this league, we'd be having a similar podcast right now.
Agreed.
Except Carolina has more guys that can flare up, I think. And I think that they're trending toward flaring up more and more and more. And we've seen them. I mean, the last 3 Saturdays, who's been better in the league than them the last 3 Saturdays?
That's a good point.
What's happened is in between those games, they've been really bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to make for a fun ACC tournament to watch because, like you said, there's just nobody that you're like, oh, the only reason they're not winning this one is if they mess up and just lose a game they shouldn't. So
and they can. Yeah. If we're doing our 3 things Wednesday night at about 12:45 in the morning, Thursday morning, and it's about, okay, well, where are they going to go? Where are they going to be seated next week? They're going to be at 10 or 11 in the NCAA tournament and have to dig their way out of that. That would not surprise me if we have that podcast.
Exactly. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be interesting to watch. And, obviously AJ will be in Greensboro at the ACC tournament. So make sure you guys keep it locked to the YouTube channel here and our website. If you haven't checked it out already, make sure you guys head over there after this video. And for all your coverage of UNC football, basketball, and recruiting, TarHeelIllustrated.com. AJ, I think it's a good place to wrap it up, man. We'll see what happens this week, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited. It's here a little bit more, this time a year ago, I'm going to run that column I ran the day that everything ended, and we're going to pop that up here in the next couple of days. But life stopped there. The world just stopped. Our country stopped this time a year ago. So it's kind of exciting. We're going to get to see it play through now. It's not going to be what it was pre-pandemic, but it's progress. It's the ACC tournament. It's one of my favorite things in life. So I'm pretty excited about heading over there.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Like I said, keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your coverage from Greensboro. Next week, I've been Jacob Turner. It's about to cough over here. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. As always, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.